Good evening, everyone. And I want to push the wrong button here. How's everyone doing? So glad that you have joined us tonight for Worship Leaders Let's Chat. Listen, while you were jumping in, say hello. Let us know where you are watching from. It is always an honor and such a privilege to be able to spend some time with you guys. And I don't take it lightly that you allow me this time to come and just chat with you. And so thank you so much for always pressing play if you're watching a replay and for joining us for this time. As you know, last month we were hosting Worship Leaders Let's Chat, the Pastor's Edition, in honor of Pastor Appreciation Month. And I hope that you guys were blessed. I know I was by each and every guest that we had on, from my pastor, Marvin Jackson, to my friend, Pastor Damon Moore, to my daughter's fiance's dad, Pastor Mark Carson. And then last week we had, oh my gosh, I just drew a blank. We had Pastor Ronnie Harrison, of course. And then listen, tonight I wanted to bless you and let's have one more voice from a dear friend of mine, longtime friend. I can't believe that we've been serving together in ministry as long as we have, but you can share how long we've been in ministry together. Would you guys please make welcome my friend all the way from the West Coast? For me, it's West Coast, Pastor Israel Campbell. What's up, Pastor Is?
Oh, so good to be with you. And I will not tell how many years we have been doing ministry. I think that is a shame. We are just very mature and just have known each other for years, because there's no, like, a year. What is it? A year is worth 1,000 to God. One day is something. So we've known each other for a few days.
Yes, I like that better. And it's been since we were wee little children.
Exactly. We in pews as children, we were ministering the gospel. So good to see you.
It's so great to see you too. Well, why don't you tell everybody where you are serving and how you got to this place of in California, not worship leading, senior pastoring.
Yes. Well, you knew us in the Orlando area, but we have always been, my wife and I, from the West Coast. We met in Seattle, but I was actually abandoned as a baby just south of Los Angeles. And so we are actually pastoring in LA. We're in the beach cities in Hermosa Beach. If you look it up in Revelations, you can look it up in Daniel, where Jesus is coming back is probably where we are living. It is beautiful, and these people need Jesus. And so, yes, that is where we are, and we love it. I know we pastored in North Carolina for 10 years, and it was a great season there, great people, great church, and just absolutely loved it, but always felt like we would go back home at one point and, kind of
rocking it.
Yeah, and we are loving it. We're killing it. And I can remember when we first moved, like, why would you move? You've got those 2 campuses in North Carolina. Yeah. Why would you move to Los Angeles? Nobody there is saved. And we're like, exactly why we're moving to Los Angeles, because nobody's saved. And so here we are, absolutely loving it, loving the community, loving just people that don't know Jesus, and kind of helping try to fix people that, maybe Christianity is given a bad blurb or something. So a church is just fun and exciting. It's not, 3 generations of we've been in church and this is my daddy's pew, you can't sit there. It is different, but we absolutely love it.
Man, so let me ask you, and I know I had several questions that I sent to you ahead of time, but what I am curious about, those, because you came to Orlando from Seattle.
Yes.
Right? From Seattle to Orlando to North Carolina.
Yes.
Back to Los Angeles.
Yes. So we have frequent flyer miles. Upgraded all the time.
Talk about some culture shock.
Yeah, very much. And it's actually, when you're doing those kind of moves, you're like, God, why is this happening or whatever. But as we look at it now, it's all been preparation. And so, Orlando really, really helped us with diversity. We were from Assemblies of God, all white church in Seattle. We clapped like this. And then we got to Orlando and I learned to clap like this.
Yes,
And then North
exactly
Carolina.
like that.
Exactly. And then North Carolina was a combination of both. We were in you visited just a very multiracial church. And so we learned how to do both. And then I think LA has been a little bit different in the aspect of just the unchurched aspect. But all of those experiences, I think we see in our campus right now. We kind of see that in our church. And so we're loving it.
I love it. And the name of your church is Flourishing.
Flourishing, like Psalms 92:12 that says the righteous shall flourish like a palm tree.
Yeah.
And so that's us. We are just we're flourishing and speaking that into people's lives and prophesying that. And so we're loving it.
Yeah, I love it. Now, does your wife, Rachel, does she still lead worship for you? Do you guys have another worship leader?
Yeah, we've got another worship leader that does great. It is amazing. Rachel's over Create, and everybody moves over when she, if she transitions service, she'll still sing, she'll still worship. And then our daughter Phoebe is actually, I think we're releasing a worship song this weekend, and she is the leading singer of it. And so you're probably freaking out. Your daughter's about to get married, and my daughter is leading worship. So Rachel's over creative and does that she's amazing at that. I kind of feel like there's not a part for me to really do at the church because Rachel can sing and Rachel can preach, and so I'm just kind of I'm along for the ride.
She is definitely a woman on fire. She is. I love her so much. So let's get jumping. We've got some folks watching all the way from Brazil, from North Carolina, here in Pompano Beach, Florida, Orlando, Florida, of course. So as you guys are watching, go ahead and let us know where you're streaming from. So let's get started with this chat. So Pastor Israel, as a pastor, what role do you feel praise and worship plays in the culture of the church? And then what does praise and worship mean for you personally?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll answer them in reverse.
Yeah.
But I was a pastor's kid, and just my short testimony was just a little bit of a rebellious season when I was about 19 years old. And, I was raised in church, loved God, went through some difficult things. My dad, who was the pastor who had adopted me, passed away. And I just had this moment where, I loved God, but didn't love his church, and just was kind of doing my own thing and was just backslidden. And so it was going to a church where they were worshiping, and it wasn't the message, it wasn't necessarily the greeting or the production or the classes that they had afterwards, or all the signs welcoming people in. All of those things were great, but it was actually the presence of God in that atmosphere that just changed me. And I know we can say it and it can become cliche, but just one moment in God's presence can do so much. Like me, suicidal, depressed, it was that moment, and I've never wrestled with that again. So many different people, whether it was my wife with just struggling with different things that she was addicted to, just broken in the presence of God. So for me personally, that worship experience is so powerful because God can do something so powerful in that moment. And so part of our culture is creating that space to breathe, that place for God to show up. And it's just, it is one of those things that we just fight for and think are precious, and isn't just, hey, this is on our planning center. We do this fast song, medium song, slow song so that we can get to the preaching. But It really is part of, hey, this is a moment where somebody can really be transformed.
I know your story, and I know Rachel's story, but totally forgot, honestly. Can I just park there for just a minute?
Sure.
Because you talk about the importance of the presence of God and how it, for you personally, that's your testimony, that being in the presence of God totally delivered, totally set free. Can you speak to that just a little bit more, like just how important it is, um, not just for the worship leaders to understand what the assignment is of creating that atmosphere, but also for the church members to come into God's house or come into God's presence with that anticipation of encountering the presence of God?
Yeah, like anything, we can take it for granted and just kind of get used to it. Hey, this is what we do, 23 minutes on the run sheet, depending on whose run sheet you're using.
Yeah.
And we're just doing that. But, a lot of the times we'll talk to our team about, there's people that are coming to church today that this is the one moment that they have that can really determine oftentimes eternity and can determine some things like, I'm gonna stay in this marriage. I'm going to this addiction is I'm going to really seek God to be healed from, or healing in my body. I'm going to receive this healing because that's the song that we were singing, that he is a healer. Or with depression and anxiety at an all-time high in America right now, we can't just sing a song because it sounded good and Elevation did it, so we should do it. It's like, no, we've got to have this moment and really have that presence of God. And it's all, I was thinking about this, and it might even been one of my answers to one of the
Yeah,
other
you're
questions.
fine. You're good.
But it's I feel like it's so good that we're excellent in our production now as the church, because you can remember back in the day
Yeah.
with production, there wasn't practices, there wasn't rehearsals. We just could wing it and do it. And so then we've gotten better, but you can be out of balance in anything. I had a friend that had to be hospitalized because he drank too much water. And I'm like, who drinks too much? I thought my doctors always tell me I don't drink enough water.
Wow.
But anything can be out of balance. So
Yeah.
we can get so professional production excellent that we run through the things and then miss the whole point. But it wasn't supposed to be that we hit every thing right. It was, wow, did somebody have a touch of heaven here on earth, and be pulled to Jesus in a greater way.
Yeah. I just thinking about when I had Pastor or Dr. Ron Canoli on one time, and he,
Wow.
one of the questions was, well, how do you know when God's presence is there? It's more than just goosebumps. It's more than just butterflies in our stomach and things of that nature. But it's when we see lives being changed, when we see, people being delivered, when we see people being healed, that's when we know that we're in his presence.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
the bishop of worship, he's got it down. I missed that one. I need to
Yeah.
go back and listen to that. And those generals in the faith
Yeah.
are really, if they wouldn't have trailblazed for us,
Yeah.
we wouldn't even know that. We'd still just be singing songs without actually getting in that. So that's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can we best cultivate praise and worship in our local church?
Yeah, I think it is something. If we're going to really cultivate it, everything that we do has to be intentional, and it's not by happenstance. And so we're thinking about it beforehand of who's on the worship team. Are we representing our community? What are we singing? Are these, is it just the latest songs, or is it actually something that is, man, this congregation needs this at this point? LA, just for an example, and maybe a weird example, but like, the weekend Kobe Bryant dies. We're cultivating, okay, so then people are in grief. How do we connect connect them through God with this, and not just, sing a song that's so not there. Like, okay, we're going to spiritual warfare this week. Well, you missed it. You know what I mean? This is more of a time where we are looking to God for a source of hope and for help in these things. And so I think cultivating is really has to do with intentionality, and intentionality should come with prayer and really seeking God on that. On like, okay, how do we do this? And of course, there's always best practices. There's always, always looking to see. This is such a great channel for, worship leaders to learn, and what is God doing? What is God saying? And so we always want to do that. But I also think that intentionality just really goes with a prayer life. And it's so easy in ministry to just be go, go, go. And so it's just like, okay, well, here's the rehearsal. Okay, here's this. Okay, let's go back and record, the vocals over that if we're going to send that out. And we got to get our Instagram up, and we got to get, all these things that are important. But if we're not intentional about, I think, really thinking about the worship experience and what we're praying for, that moment, that Israel moment, that Rachel moment, that LaRue moment, that God did something so powerful, it changed our destiny.
Yeah, that's so good. And you're right. We can sometimes just kind of go over, skip way over that and get just in our motion and just kind of going through, what we're used to doing on the regular. But we have to be intentional about having an encounter, having that moment with the Lord. And so in our preparation, making sure that we are making those preparations for the purpose of encountering God's presence, right?
Yeah, and I don't know, you would tell me, or Rachel would tell me, because I don't know. I'm sure so many people would have been disappointed tonight if they're like, oh, Israel. And then it's like Israel Campbell, not Israel Houghton. He doesn't know how to sing. This guy can't lead worship. He can't even, auto-tune couldn't even help me. And so there's...
You got the word of the Lord in your mouth.
Yes, but I've sat next to you during worship experiences and sang, and then saw you move to another aisle because it was so bad. But what were we saying? We were saying something about when that intentionality behind that. I think you can even practice those moments, like, and so remember that old quote, Allen Iverson, practice, you're talking practice, and he'd go over, practice, why are you talking practice? But the reality is you can't produce something you don't practice. And so with your teams, with rehearsals, you should be practicing, in a sense, getting into those moments where people are free, because it's not going to happen on a Sunday if you've never practiced it. That's my thoughts on it, but I'm not.
But you are so spot on, though. You are so spot on. People have I've heard the cliche, practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. Whatever you practice over and over and over again, even if you're practicing standing and just, when you're leading worship, if you're practicing just not having any type of response or having any type of emotion, then that's going to be what you put out. And so if you don't practice, like you said, having those moments and having an encounter with God together as a team, then when you get up before the people to lead them, you won't know, it won't make any sense, or you won't be able to find it.
And it won't be authentic either. And I so agree with you. It just makes it so much easier. When I know my notes as a speaker, and I have, preached it maybe, or just really, it's so much easier than having to look at my notes. Okay, point number 4 is this, but if it's who you are and it's what you do, then you just go ahead and do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So next, we just talked about this. How can a pastor help their church to grow in their understanding and their practice of worship?
Oh, that's good. As a pastor, I think that there's a couple different things that I think that are my responsibility. Is I have to know that, and as much as I love to preach, man, I love to preach. I want to get the word of God into people. I know that faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word. So I know the importance of the word, but at the worship experience, I can't be like, okay, guys, hurry it up, speed it up, because it's my time. It's the important time for the word of God. And so as a pastor, I think it's very important to lead that by, this is an important moment. This isn't something that we just rush through. In fact, there will be moments where, hey, we might not even preach the word. We just may minister. And so I think it goes to that. And then it also goes to, I think, as the pastor, they see me, they watch me. And so if I'm like what you say, practice putting my hands in my pocket, or, waiting in the green room until worship's over, or, just busy watching Instagram or all the different things that can be in a service, talking to the service coordinator about, hey, make sure the lights are on, all these things that we can, get so distracted in. But if I can be a worshiper, and I can be a praiser, and I can be entering in and getting something out of it, I think it helps create that whole atmosphere in the entire church.
Yeah, that is so true. And several of my other guests that have been on, that's been one of the main things that they've all said consistently, is that the pastor is that lead worship leader. People will, if you set the example, people will follow.
And they always end up, I think they always end up a little bit below you, not usually above you in your, you know what I mean? It's almost like a thermostat.
Yeah.
You might set it for 75, but the temperature we all know, gets to 65.
Right.
It never goes, we set it for 75 and it went better. It's usually off a little bit. And so I think as pastors, I've heard pastors like complain, I don't have a worshiping church. And I'm like, that's on you, buddy. And like you're saying, and I think that, depending on how that thermostat you decide what it's going to be. And a thermostat is different than a temperature. Temperature gauge is just, I'm just going to do what the congregation feels like today. I'm just going to be, it's a tough day today. It's a little overcast in California, and we don't know what to do if we don't see the sunshine. So we're just going to kind of be mellow. Well, that's a thermometer. You're just gauging how everybody's in the church. But we're, as pastors, I'm called to be the thermostat. And so I'm either going to raise the temperature or lower the temperature, depending on who I'm at. And I don't think that's manufacturing. I just think it's who I am, and that's what I'm supposed to do. It'd be manufacturing if I wasn't a worshiper and I'm like, and I have the right moves when I praise, and I tried to follow all that. So that's my thoughts.
I love it. That's so spot on. And this is why I love you so much, because you just do your thing. I love it. But you're right. And that is such a great analogy of the thermostat and the temperature gauge or thermometer, right? And a great reminder that if whatever we set it at, it's going to be just below. So that's why we have to always kind of go above and beyond. It's almost like, you're trying to teach someone or introduce something to someone, and it's like, this is so great. And they're like, yeah, sure. No, really, it's really great. And you almost, are having to encourage them, right? It's like, you've got to go above and beyond so they'll come along with you.
Yeah, and David did that.
Yeah.
His wife was like, "Oh, weren't you undignified?" But he was leading, and it was personal. It was crazy, but all of Israel went to another level in their worship because they saw the leader was not just trying to get likes on Instagram. It wasn't just about how many followers he could. It was, this is my worship to God, and I'm going to take it to another level. And I think it challenged the nation, and it still challenges us thousands of years later.
Yeah, absolutely. Pastor Israel, what are some ways, and I know that Pastor Rachel was a worship leader for you at the church for many years, but now you have other worship leaders on your team. But what are some ways that pastors and worship leaders can develop their relationship is working together.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important, isn't it? And the
Yeah.
communication factor is there, and I think that there has to be, there has to be some crucial conversations sometimes. Being able to say, "Hey, this isn't about ego. This isn't about style. Let's have some conversations about how we do this, because it is. They call it a worship leader. So you're not having a worship manager. You're having a worship leader, and then a pastor, and they should flow very well. Lisha says, "Hey, bring me the harp so that I can prophesy." And so there was obviously they had to work together to get the result. And so I think that communication, again, going back to that word intentionality, is like, hey, let's really meet and let's really talk about stuff. This is, hey, when I will go there and I bring it up, please, please don't bring it all the way back down again when I just brought it all the way up. I want to transition there and teach, and this is why. And, some of the great worship leaders that we have now are the next generation. And so to me, it's a lot like sports. The older generation, we weren't as gifted and we weren't as talented. Like, at least my own sporting analogy is, I wasn't that gifted and talented, but I knew how to do the basics. I knew how to box out. I knew how to do pick and roll and all of that. And the next generation is so good. It's like basketball. They see Stephon Curry, and they can shoot three, and they're amazing. They're so talented. The songs they're writing, but some of the old school stuff they just don't know, and they don't know the why behind. This is why you do this. And so I think if you're going to be a good pastor, you have to kind of teach them the why. Have the conversations about, this is why we do this. This is why, and then having those conversations. That's what I think.
That's so great. And but sometimes it's a challenge to do that, to have those conversations as a worship leader. What if there were a scenario where the worship leader didn't have that understanding of why the pastor was shutting them down, so to speak? They get the praise and worship to a certain place, and then the pastor would come up and completely shut everything and stop it. And having that conversation, how would a worship leader go to a pastor to have that type of a conversation with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it should never be your first conversation that you've had. And I think that that's the mistake is, if it's your first conversation, that's going to be a difficult first conversation. Yeah. And so those that play together, stay together. And so I think that our communication is so key, but it should be constant. And so when you have one of those moments, there's enough deposits. There's enough, remember when we were young and we got our first debit card, and I don't know about you, but I got like the NSF thing, and it was like not just one, but then all of a sudden the one caused 2, 3, 4, and there's like, and I think what happens in ministry sometimes is there's not enough in the account to then pull from, and then it just gets worse and worse. And then you're like, well, not only did he stop worship, but when he went up to pray, he's sang a song that he didn't, and and it just gets worse and worse. But I think if there's consistent communication and humble communication, and then understanding communication, like Sunday after the pastor preaches is probably not the time to have that conversation. And so you got to know timing. You got to know humility, because if it's like, the anointing left the building when you got up, you're probably not going to stay on team too long. You know what I mean? So, but I think if there's already the relationship there, and there's the humility there, and there's the, hey, can you help me with this? Because I want to serve the vision of the house. I want to make sure that I'm handing off the baton to you well, and I just, there's a couple things that I don't, and you're just humble about it. I think that then, a good leader will be like, okay, we can work on this. Yeah, this is the why behind. So I don't know.
No, I love it. That's so good. So good. So and even in that, what are some of the stresses, some of the things that maybe that senior pastors deal with or have to think about that maybe as a lay person or even people on staff that we don't think about, that you as a senior pastor have to that you think about and that you're dealing with?
Yeah, and I think that even goes with the worship leader sometimes is we don't see, I think we can get so departments. So
Yeah.
it's worship leading, it's children's ministry, it's youth, it's greeters, it's ushers, it's production. There's so many pastoral care. And so we can all get in our own things, which is great because without those people leading those departments, leading those ministries, then, we wouldn't be able to be as effective as we are. But that's a lot of what sometimes the worship leader doesn't know is he doesn't see the whole thing, or he doesn't know what's going on, or he doesn't know what somebody might be going through or whatever. And I think that lay people in church also don't know that. I know somebody the other day, just in casual with Rachel, was like, hey, I sent you a text and you didn't return my call. And I saw how many texts Rachel got that day. And so it would be one thing in her life. This person who I love, she may get 2 texts a day, and Rachel may get 76
Yeah.
texts a day. And and then of course you get those threads and you're like, no, keep me off of this, all of those things. And so I think that would be the only thing that I think sometimes we don't see, or the greatest stress, is that we probably only see, and I think we all do that, we only see our world. And a lot of times a senior pastor will be looking at a greater view. And so he'll be thinking about the nursery, or he'll be thinking about some of those other things. And, and in pastoring, especially in 2020, you are, you're thinking about the Republicans in your church, and you're thinking about the Democrats. In my case, you're thinking about the Laker fans, and you're thinking about the Clipper fans. Somebody is going to be happy this year,
Yeah.
and somebody is going to be mad. And
Yeah.
you've got the people that just want the word, and you got the people that just want the worship. You got the ones that want only missionaries, only support the missionaries, and then the other ones, why aren't we building a building? And so, those are some of the things that I think can be difficult leading, but it's the greatest honor. And I don't know a leader that just doesn't go, wow, this is a privilege. And if you're created for it and you're called for it, it's not that big of a deal. There are other issues out there that people are facing that are a lot tougher than managing those expectations.
That's thank you. That's so good. And I think that was what I was looking for, is just to have that understanding that sometimes, like you said, we can compartmentalize or departmentalize our own world and don't realize that our pastors are looking at all of them. And we should know it. It's kind of like preaching to the choir, but sometimes I feel like we have to be reminded, especially in what really made me want to do this this series was just the rise, or maybe, I don't know if has always happened, but just the awareness or the rise of suicides that's been happening with pastors. And it's just unbelievable. Just
It's
in
it's
that.
so sad. It is so sad.
Yeah.
And if you're in ministry, I would just say reach out. I think there's been I think the other tension, or maybe the other, you said the stress to that is, you never want a pastor that's melancholy, or like just comes in and it's just a tough week. You don't carry that. At least not the people that I know or respect. Usually it's, we're going to climb the mountain, and, we're going to see God. We will possess our prophetic future. We're always full of faith. And that's what you want on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody going, hey, we're doing a year-long series on Lamentations. Okay. We are just gonna really study this. And so we're full of faith,
Yeah.
but a lot of times we're full of faith, but at the same time, we're 100% full of fear, full of anxiety, just as stressed as the congregation is. But for that moment, we may mask, or we may be walking in God's grace in that. And so that's difficult, because then we go back to, we're raising daughters and teenagers and, kids, and we could have our own health issues, or we could have, all those different things. And so I think sometimes the old school was, don't let anybody know you had any problems, and fake it till you make it, and all of that. And I get that on Sunday. I think people still want to see authentic. But I also feel like if you're in that situation, reach out, let somebody know, and you are needed, you are wanted, and God can get you through this season. It's tough. And the theology of this stinks is a theology. I mean, there are some things that we just can't, we don't know, and I don't know the answer to. And it's just the theology of this stinks, and I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna love you through it, and God's got you, and your best is ahead of you, and that's not just a cliche.
Right. Amen. So with that, then how do we serve our pastors in that? How do we serve our pastors? I know we pray for them, but what else? Is there anything else that we can do?
Yeah, I think I personally, I know this may sound like self-serving, but nobody's ever come up to me and said that was a great message, and I said, would you stop? Could you please stop? Or somebody's like, Israel, you and Rachel are doing so good. I've never been like, hey, too much compliments. So I think encouraging, and all throughout the Bible, there's just, I love that scripture verse where Paul says, don't lose your confidence. Well, why? How do we lose it? And I think that all of us, we can lose our confidences sometimes. And so I think one of the ways is, yes, pray for your pastors. We need that, but also let them know that you've got their back, and then actually have their back. There are two different things. It's like, I got your back, and then I don't see you. So I think that's supportive. I think, really being there. I read that when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, in his pocket was a clipping of an article where a journalist had said something nice about him. And, everything in the press was negative, but somebody wrote something positive, and he had it. And we look at Abraham Lincoln, oh, what a great leader, but he even needed some encouragement. And so I think your pastors could always use, encouragement, not flattery. There's a difference, but encouragement. And I think that goes a long ways.
You said not flattery. Can you give an example? Not flattery.
Yeah, well, you can say it. What is it, Brown? I don't know if we could say this on the show. I don't know what's appropriate. I'm in LA. I can say anything in LA. You can say anything, but you can say something because you want something. Yeah. So you say something because you're wanting an exchange of, sometimes you say something because you're really hoping that they say something back. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, I really like your nails. And then you're really hoping that they say something about your new haircut. And then they don't. And you're like, oh, I can't believe them. So that's flattery. Or, Pastor, that was a good message, but secretly you're saying that, texting that, posting that, because you know that there's an opening up somewhere, and so you're hoping that your name is, that's the one. But it should be genuine, and it should be, and I think it's a good, it's great muscle memory. It's sometimes difficult to do in the beginning, but it's a great muscle memory to learn how to encourage people. And it talks about that, encourage them in the Lord. And I think that that's a good thing to do, is learn to not flatter, but learn to encourage somebody in the Lord. And so that's like that one point you said, I really needed that because I'm going through this. Man, changes the world. I did a message on flourishing, and somebody drew me, artist drew these palm trees. And it's like, it meant so much to Rachel and I, because it was like, they have no idea I needed that. That was like, they got something from the message, and it wasn't just a thumbs up emoji, on whatever, or a like or a heart or something like that, but it really was something that ministered to us. So Start painting, folks. No, just
Start painting pictures about your pastor's messages.
yeah, your next message. Just,
Stick figures, stick trees, and people.
oh yes, mangers. Build them a manger.
That's so great, man. This has been so good. Thank you. So
Oh,
much.
thank you. It's such an honor. We love you, love you, love you. And that's not flattery.
No.
Rachel and I love you. You have, I think that sometimes you don't know seeds that you plant and then you don't know the harvest that's on the other side. And there is a harvest in LA that you need to come see because
Wow.
some seeds that you sowed into Rachel and I, and
Wow.
they're palm trees. They are not little ferns. They are, and you'd be blessed. So we got to get you once this worldwide pandemic is over. You need to come and visit us in LA.
I'd love to. I'd love to. Well, you guys, this has been an amazing time with Pastor Israel Campbell. And I see a lot of folks are giving you amens and good teachings and so good and teach us. And so this is not, and it's not flattery. They're there.
Good.
Oh, wow. Jennifer Gamboa. I don't know if you remember Jennifer.
Oh, of course I do. Oh my goodness. That is like bringing back old school, great people.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is in our seasons when we were together, just so many great people. Huh?
Yeah.
How
Beautiful
cool.
people. Beautiful. I don't want to go down a list and start calling names because I'll be here for a minute. So, but listen, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I was just kind of looking to make sure I didn't miss any questions or anything like that. Okay, no. All right, we're good. We are good to go. Pastor Israel, thank you. I'm going to don't leave yet. Don't disconnect yet. Okay. Allison might move you backstage, but hang on. Don't hang up yet. So but you guys, so listen, we are gearing up for a really exciting November. When I mentioned to you guys last week that I had something planned, I hadn't actually asked 100% yet. I kind of mentioned it in passing, but I did ask and I got the go ahead. And so listen, November 11th is my 14th wedding anniversary. And so for the entire month of November, I'm going to have my hubby with me, Marvette, and we're going to be hosting Marriage in Ministry. So I'll have he's going to be my first guest next Tuesday night. That's going to be funny. Y'all pray for me now because y'all know Marvette can be funny and he doesn't even try to be funny. But so he's going to be my first guest next week, Monday. And then I have some other friends that will be joining me for the rest of the month. And we'll be talking about marriage and ministry. This is going to be a fun time. So don't miss it. If you are married and you're in ministry, or you're single and want to be married in ministry, and or if you just join us. It's going to be a fun time. So but thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I look forward to seeing y'all next Tuesday night. And a big God bless you. And thank you again to Pastor Israel Campbell for joining me. I will see y'all next Monday night at 7:00 for Worship Leaders Let's Chat. Have a great night. Mwah. Bye.